And we're live.
Oh my god. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Longkang Kitties. As you can tell, this is not John Wang. John Wang is missing today because he's not feeling very well, which is we are doing the first episode in the entire Longkang history.
Indeed. Without John. And we are a little bit nervous now, so please forgive us because John handles all the technical stuff, right?
Yeah. So we try not to F up, And then and because he's gone, so now I'm the most handsome whatever person on this podcast. So all right. But okay, anyways, today, right, we've got this very, very important guest with us. Very, very amazing guest with us. Dr. Chee. Welcome back to the Longkang.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
It's been a while since you've been here, right?
Yes, it has. A different studio, but...
Do you remember what we asked you in our last episode?
I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, so...
You were asked one of the most iconic questions in the Longkang history, magical woman history, right? Mm-hmm. I think. But it's been... I think 2 or 3 years since the interview, right? Or maybe is it 4?
Yes.
No. It's like before COVID, I think. 2019.
2019.
Yeah.
How many years is that? 4 years. Oh my God.
Yeah, just before the election.
Time flies when you're having fun or not.
Are you having fun now? You just started, not really just lah, but you started 2 restaurants, right? Yeah. Called Orange and Teal.
Yes.
How has that been for you?
Tremendously hectic. It has its moments now, but F&B, it's really, really busy, and as I said, you have 101 things all going off at the same time. So you've got to try to manage them and handle it the best you can.
Mm-hmm.
How did the idea of opening an F&B outlet come to you, or why do you decide to do it?
Actually, it started way before these couple of years, and it started when SDP we got together as a party, and we thought, wouldn't it be good if we had a place where people could just come together and not having to look over their shoulders whenever they talk about social issues, current affairs, that kind of thing. So it's more a place where we wanted to have people to congregate, and feel at home, and just to have that cuppa and then, and some good food. Then it feels less threatening, isn't it? Then when we ask people to come to the party office, and then, you look at me, I look at you, and everybody's very nervous and that kind of thing. But, over food, over coffee, sometimes people tend to relax, and then we get in a nice conversation about different stuff. So that was the whole motivation behind it. And then we talked and talked. And the more you talk, right? And until after a little while, I just thought, hey, just get done. So I just decided to do it myself first and see what happens from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And have you built the community? Because I know you do quite a lot of events at your Orange and Teal restaurants, right? Yeah. Like you have, exhibitions, and then you've got like panel talks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the other motivation behind it. You have a space of our own. And then you go to any kind of a established hotel, just rent a function room, cost you an arm.
It's very expensive.
Very expensive. And then you got to have tea but with it, and then your snacks, and then by the time you add up the amounts, it's prohibitive.
Plus they can just take away the venue at the very last minute, right?
Yeah. And that happened to us.
It happens, right?
Yeah, it happened to us because we were a political party and people got cold feet and didn't want to rent it to us. So I said, what the heck, let's have a place of our own. And so, we get young artists who are just looking for a place to exhibit and sell the paintings, and they don't have to pay though. I say you just bring your paintings here. I'm not charging you. Just people can come in. I'll announce it, and people can just come in, have their coffee, and then they want to buy your paintings straight off from you guys. Now, we had poetry reading as well. I recently invited a string quartet to come in, and then we've had some
nice.
Given the nature that
so artsy,
it was the most resplendent afternoon.
I can imagine.
Have tea, and then the 4 of them were going off with the violins and cello, and it was really nice. It was really nice. We're hoping to have more of that. And then we also had some political forums where we talked about different issues like cost of living, education, censorship in Singapore, that kinds of things. So it's one of the things I wanted to do was also promote the arts and culture, as well as a place where we can have some discussion, some serious discussion. So it's shaping up.
So, do you have a good turnout when it's, when you have your political forums? Because usually, I would say that political forums take place in a closed space, right? Yeah. Whereas your restaurant is a very open area where everybody can just look and see. Is there still like any residual fear, you think?
No, I think people are a lot more motivated, especially with social media, and it depends on the topic to them. We had the discussion on cost of living was standing room only.
Wow.
Yeah, people just wanted to listen, and then especially it wasn't one of us speaking. We had people who, workers, people who were going through the rigors of everyday life, trying to make that extra buck for them, for their family, and that attracted quite a nice crowd in there.
Dr. Chee, if I may interject, can I tell you the tale of my friend? So I have this friend, MJ. So he's unfortunately a naysayer of yours. In fact, he doesn't hold the opposition generally in any high regard, right? But of course, neither is he a supporter of the incumbent, right? So he has always been very open about his views. But one day he told me, this Dr. Chee, he finally opened a restaurant. Now I see him up a little bit more. So he's strangely has a little bit more respect for you, and a little bit more perhaps open to listen to your views and the views of the SDP, simply because you opened a restaurant, right? Of course, you have experienced success in many areas, especially in the academic realm, but it takes you to open a restaurant to garner respect from him. Why do you think this is so?
I don't know. Since getting into the industry itself, I just found this newfound respect for F&B operators, and it's understandable. I mean, you're working under huge, numerous constraints, and then you have to deliver, and it's unrelenting because when you open, people don't care, right? I don't know what problems you have in the kitchen, in the administrative sections of your business, but when I come here, I pay for the food, I expect to be served, and people want to have a good time, and rightly so. That's part of the cause. But you can well imagine, because the place that we're at, sometimes landlords don't allow you to close. So you've got to open 7 days a week, and that pressure is there. Once you have your opening hours, people walk in, they expect to be served now. So the pressure is there.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's a real challenge. But as I said, it has its moments, and I can understand when, being an academic or in my previous life when I was doing my writing.
So in a capitalistic society, right? The interest of the business owner is usually pit against the interest of the worker, right? Because you want your workers to maximize their work, but then you want to maximize your profit. So previously, right, when you're in the SDP, you were always championing the rights of workers. So has being a business owner changed your views or changed things for you?
No, in fact, I think it's reinforced it. In that sense that, we always see it as it's diametric opposite between staff and management, owner and worker, that kind of thing. But I just found that while it has its difficulties, sure, but you've got to apply a very different mindset, different paradigm when we begin to see that you almost got to work as a concerted whole before anything can succeed. If you're always pitting one against the other, then you're going to end up with a lot of grief, you see. But my own philosophy is that if you don't take care of your employees, who are your greatest asset, you're not going to, as a business owner, you're not going to just enjoy the fruits of your labor. And I'm just talking about the financial side of things, right? But there's also this other aspect, isn't it, of just really enjoying what you do rather than just out there to squeeze that last dollar out from all your employees and all your customers and so on and so forth. So for me, as I said, it's really looking at it in a more holistic, taking a more holistic approach, whereby you want your staff to feel that they have a sense of belonging, to feel that, number two, that they have just pathway of moving up. Right? Who wants to be stuck in a little cubby hole in front of the oven the whole time? But you want them to learn skills. You want them to progress in life. just like any one of us here.
Right.
Trying it. So it's that kind of, if you take that on board and you try to encourage them, I think there's still a chance that it might work.
Okay. Well, do you think that there's a challenge in motivating people nowadays? Because like I think after the pandemic, during the pandemic, there was this whole like Tang Ping kind of thing happening in China, and then there's this like quiet quitting, working your wage kind of movement happening amongst predominantly the younger generation, where they think like, no, F this shit. I'm working so hard, I'm earning so little money, I can't even afford to buy a house. Why do I need to work extra for the business owner who is reaping all the profits? Because, you know, during the pandemic, the top 1% was earning like a crazy amount of money when the rest of us were suffering, right?
Yeah.
So like how do we reconcile that, and how do we motivate people to work?
I mean, you know, the one thing that I think a mistake that we all sometimes make is think that the only thing that motivates people, right, is to work harder, is financial reward. That's, I think, sometimes having talked to many of the people that have come through, you know, Orange and Teal, is that they don't just look for money. That's important too. You make sure that that they're compensated financially, remunerated well. But at the same time, they want to look for something more. As I said, sometimes appreciation of being recognized, the work that they do, taking pride, you know, as I said, in anything you do, right? Whether it be it you build your computers or you're dealing with financial instruments and so on. Even in F&B, when you put something out, you want to feel that's part of you that's going out, that you're serving, right? And it's that passion, that pride. There's sometimes that I think is just as powerful in its motivation as financial rewards. So, you know, a lot of times I feel also very disappointed when people just say, how much are you paying me? Right? The guy that next door that pays you $100 more, $200 more, I'm moving. But you don't take into the rest of the considerations, you know, in terms of where are you at? Who am I working for? What am I working for? Those are the things that hopefully, you know, as more enlightened business owners take all this on board. Maybe it might help in the situation going forward. I don't know. I'm just experimenting this myself, but I honestly believe there's an alternative model, and just rather than just cracking the whip and putting everybody's nose to the grindstone and say, just deliver and get me my money. That kind of thinking must change.
But do you think that it's in a way also important to that our wages increase? Because prior to the pandemic, my friend bought her HDB for like 400K. And like 3 years later, it's now about 650K. So like, you know, the prices have gone up so much, and our wages have not, right? So it's getting really increasingly hard to live in this kind of country.
Tell me about it, because at every time the government raises fees, and the latest one, you know, is the GST, and it's going to raise another 1% next year. It's not just that 1%; it's a multiplier effect, isn't it? Right? I mean, I just take into this situation. We have talked about it for a long time, many years in the political realm, but now, you know, having been involved in business itself, I see, you know, when prices go up, you know, all your suppliers have to increase their fees. Things simple like that we normally don't take in consideration much. Eggs, right? Simple item. But your eggs, don't forget, goes in your cake. So your cake goes up. It goes in your pasta to make your, you know. So everything then goes up, right? And then when you think about it, the most important ingredient in all this increases is land cost, right? You know, rent, right? But rent is not just, for example, my outlet, just paying the rent, and then you have to sort of make good, right? So the price that you come in, you pay for your food has to go up. But then you think about it, the people that supply you, they have They have to rent their premises, they want to storage, warehouse and everything. When their rent goes up, they have to pass on the cost as well. And so everything then gets multiplied. But then to answer your question is that when everything goes up, what about your wages? And this is where
it goes down.
No, and it's not keeping up with the times, you see. And this is where I worry, and that's why we've been fighting, for a long time, this cost of living. And then you have this government putting away reserves, financial reserves, at some estimate from experts now, in excess of $1 trillion. Where is all this money that can be used to circulate and to benefit the people? It's all squirreled away.
They always talk about like the younger generation and like saving it for like a rainy day, but like there won't be a younger generation where we're all like fucking dead,
This is no, but this is. I mean, you hit the nail.
Like no one wants to give birth and have kids because everything's so expensive, and then there won't be a new generation unless we import more immigrants into Singapore. And going back to the rental, like recently there's been like a lot of news about expats moving out of Singapore because the rental has been increasing at such a crazy rate, like at sometimes, at 100% increase.
So for some context, right, I teach in an institution and there are a number of foreign students there. So prior to the pandemic, like a young Indonesian student would pay about $600 to $700 for a small room in a shared apartment. Now, 2023 is risen to 1.1K per student. So the landlord charges 7 students to live in a 5-room HDB flat. So that's 7.7K to the landlord every month. Yeah.
That is so insane. But I think like the add-on impact of it is also like the fact that, our government has always told us like how we need to be competitive in a global economy, this and that. But how are we competitive when everything's so expensive? And like, according to Today Online, 7 in 10 firms are ready to move expat staff overseas because of rental.
And the government being the biggest landlord in Singapore, whether it's JTC, HDB, you got Maple Tree Capital, Land Sabana, biggest landlord, they're laughing all the way to the bank, right? And this is where I'm saying, see, we scramble every day just to make good, to pay off whatever we owe at the end of the month, right? And you make as much as you can, as quickly as you can. Then the question comes in, right? How much time do you have left to hone that skill, to really become good at what you're doing when all the time just thinking, how much can I sell? How many hours can I put in just to be able to pay off all the overheads, rent included, of course now. So that's where the problem comes in, you see. Then we keep finding ourselves, kind of chasing the tail and then going in circles and not really getting anywhere, isn't it? So that's where I worry about in terms of our future, like when people are actually beginning to, I'm talking in other countries, really beginning to see how they can have value added, and that means being innovative, right? Being creative. You look at Korea right now. I remember it was just not too long ago, when I was in younger years, Korea was engulfed in the throes of revolution and university students were out protesting all the time.
In the 80s, right?
Yeah. You remember that, right? Yeah.
Old enough.
He's old enough. I was just barely born.
But this is where we're talking, and I've talked about it during my rallies as well. That's where the government came in, and under President Kim Dae-jung, then decided to say, hey, look, enough is enough. We've got to open up society. And that's when everything then started taking root. And now everything starts with a K. It's very popular, and I don't know, K-pop, K-food and everything. So
you're saying there's this strong, there's a link between society's innovation, creativity, quality of life, the pride in their work, pride in their craft, can be linked somewhat directly to cost of land. Is it?
I think that there is a factor. Everything there's
right.
interplay. It's just not one affecting the other. The other one is also the culture that we're in right now. If everybody is keeping their head bowed and not wanting to engage in more sensitive issues, so to speak, intellectually we cannot grow in that sense. You see, that's why I say your J.K. Rowling's, like your Steve Jobs, they don't come from North Korea. If rule is, hard-handed, iron-fisted rule is all it needs to make society succeed, then you get all these entrepreneurs, everything coming up from more societies that are just very ham-fisted in their rule, isn't it?
Yeah, I think like the thing about entrepreneurship is that like a lot of my friends who try, or who want to be, like, are often put off by the extremely high cost to just even start a business here, like, rental. And I think the other thing is that like the power is very heavily in the landlord's favor in Singapore. Like I've got a friend, I have a few friends who rented in malls. I think one of them was in Millennia Walk, like in other like malls around Singapore, right? And the landlords can just do whatever they want, despite the contract that you've signed. They can just move you from like the first floor to the third floor, and then like you have to pay all the costs of renovation, and they can just jack up the prices or whatever, And I think like in other countries where there are rent controls, you don't really see this issue so much. And I think a lot of landlords also take like a percentage of what you earn.
Some landlords, they do that. They have, because they a percentage of GTO. So whatever you sell, they take a percentage of it, and then you've got to hook up your cash register, your machine that they call POS, your point of sales system, to their system, so they know exactly how much you sell. You just can't run it.
I think there was like for F&B businesses, like they were doing like a lot of Grab actually, so that they could bypass that system, right? I think, but then the landlords found out, and you're like, no way, you have to like link it all to here. Okay, so I'll just ask a question from the live chat from Lydia. Is Orange and Teal a social experiment on what a business or restaurant can be?
That's what I continue to hope it will be, despite all the pressures, all the restrictions. It's been challenging now. But
can I just congratulate you on surviving COVID? First and
oh
foremost.
my gosh, you wouldn't believe. I started it just before I started. Then they said no dining in, so we had to hold up our opening. We opened up for 3 weeks, and then they said no dining in again. So then we had to close off. We certainly caught off guard in that sense. But we just kind of thought that was towards the tail end already, so maybe it might be a good time to get it started again. But coming back to this question, being a social experiment, I still would like it to be a different model, different business paradigm, where we can take care of our staff, our employees, pay them decent wages that they don't have to slog for a lifetime and not have anything to look forward to in the future. At the same time, then, just be successful as a business. I think it's viable as a business now. Look, I've never been a businessman, and in a way, still don't consider myself as a businessman. But I didn't get into this just for pure profit now, right? It's just one of those things that as long as we can keep ourselves afloat, financially viable, not in the red and just bleeding money. We just wanted it to have people come to this place and say, hey, wow, that's something else we can do and we need to do. But that can only happen if people continue to come and patronize and then make it successful. It's not going to be there and say, hey, it's just there, so it'll just be a success all on its own. We need to cultivate it, and that's why I'm reaching out to Singaporeans. I've been doing that all this while. Ask them to come. There's a purpose to it. You need to go out and eat anyway. You're going out to have a cup of coffee anyway. Why not think of doing this? Yeah, just something that we can do as a social experiment too.
So another question, which links actually very well to your answer, is that could it be that for you can afford to experiment because you have a lot of support from ordinary Singaporeans who want to support the political work that you do, but then will normal business owners find it hard to develop alternative business models?
That is true in that sense, but it's taken me a long time, and I'm talking about close to 3 decades, isn't it? To build up this kind of support with people that can come through. But sometimes businesses take also many years to establish themselves in that sense. Look, but nobody's saying and everything is a guarantee. But it's not just in F&B. It's almost anything. You play sports, right? You do this live stream, this podcast. There's no guarantee of success, isn't it? You've just got to.
There's no success here.
I've struck a very lighthearted note here.
Painful spot in the Longkang Kitties heart.
Oh, man.
Like when I was in the lift coming up with Dr. Chee, I was telling him, actually, we just have not managed to monetize this podcast at all in all the years.
We've got one sponsor, right?
Yeah, but I've heard of people who endeavors only coming into all of a sudden they what happened in between they don't quite know, but it took years for it suddenly to hit the right spot, and then things took off. So the whole idea is look, success is never guaranteed, right? There's one of those cliches in life that it's very true.
It's true.
But you've got to keep at it, you've got to persevere, and part of that has got to come from also a sense of drive, passion, love for what you're doing, rather than say, hey, am I going to make money and this and all that kind of thing.
I think it's a balance, right? Because you need to have passion for what you do, but at the same time, if the things that you kind of expect to help you keep going is not coming in, then it's going to be hard also.
Yeah. Well, there's one of those things which you're on 2020, hindsight, that kind of thing. So you've got to be astute in how you make your decisions as you go along.
True.
I will argue that part of the success of Orange and Teal is beef brisket.
Oh, it's so good.
So the new branch got beef brisket.
Yes.
Oh, yay.
We stumbled onto something, another part of the beef, and that's beef cheese. And
I definitely recommend the beef brisket.
Yeah. So this is, I feel like we're curious that if any one of us were to pivot to a new industry, the amount of things we would have to learn and to jump into and get into and be involved in is crazy. So how did you pick up the trade? Do you have a mentor figure, or do you have people who taught you, like all these various manifold things about running a F&B? I'm so intimidating. What do you think about it? First of all, like, where would you get your suppliers from?
Like who's cooking?
Yeah, who's cooking?
The one thing that I honestly find that's important in life, like in anything that you do, is to make sure that you get the right people in there, and not knowing stuff. You know what I mean? Knowing people who know stuff that you don't necessarily know, right? Look, you have this setup, right? We know how to talk, right? But you've got to get somebody who knows the technical. There's
only one person, 2 people here. The other 50% is useless.
So when you get that done, then everything begins to fall into place now. So the important thing is to find the right people, at the right time for the right job.
Okay, but let's say if you're a person, like, our government loves to tell you, like, learn as you age or whatever, like there's the skills future, upgrade yourself continuously. Is there something to be said for like the amount of money that they're pumping in to equip people with skills or new skills, learn new things, pivot to a new career?
This whole future is just really, really uncharted, and anybody that tells you they know what lies ahead, believe me, they're lying to you. Okay, you look at AI, artificial intelligence.
Our jobs are being replaced. Literally.
Who knows where it's going to lead us, right?
Yeah.
And then all this time we're talking about upskilling. Then the next thing you know, that you upskill, something else replaces it already. I hear that. Okay, I hear that the next dangerous place where AI can go, they can, troll the entire, all your legal law books and everything, and come up with your legal strategy, how you should fight, what you should say, and everything. Lawyers begin to scratch their heads and think, and then accountants, right? And now I just saw somebody just type in, hey, how, he came to the cafe, was just sitting down, and just typing, hey, how do you think Dr. Chee should proceed? And the whole thing just went through my history on the internet. And just came up with things that, jaw-dropping,
What was the suggestions?
Some of the things, that I've thought about already, but just to have somebody tell you what you've been thinking, it's pretty creepy, isn't it? But this is where we are now, and I tell you things to come. And then if you've got okay, now it's stalled. But if you're self-driving cars, automated this, automated that, where are we headed? So you learn, you upskill. You say you learn how to drive, and then the next thing you know, you're being replaced by this. So where it is a question I think we have to grapple with.
And I think also this very funny story. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he works in a transport company, basically. And I was talking to him about AI and how AI can generate art right now, and then a lot of artists are like being replaced by machines actually because they do it so well. And then and then because he's like a bus captain or bus driver or something, he was like, yeah, you see, you're artists. When bus drivers being replaced, you all don't care. But, you're like, oh, it's okay. It's great to have self-driving cars. But, when it comes to you, oh, wow, you art people so important, yeah. And I think there's that like, kind of prejudice, I guess, we have against people who do manual labor or blue collar jobs, where we think that it's okay that they are replaced. But when something that like touches culture, writers are being replaced, artists are being replaced, then we like get into this like giant panic, like, oh my god, how can this be, right? Like, and I don't know, what do you think? Can you like project how it's gonna be when AI is gonna get a lot better and actually really replace jobs on a large scale basis?
Yeah, and that's when when we don't have anything else to do. I mean, as far as job is concerned, and what happens to our income, isn't it? That's why this whole idea, the whole concept of universal basic income, right, is taking root.
Are you a proponent of it?
Well, I think it has, if you just to have that open mind about it, it has to, it may come one day, whether you agree with it or whether you like it or not. And I think rather than just us kind of suppressing it because, hey, you have one prejudice or another, either for it or against it, let's have an open debate about it. And this is where I think I think this forum here is fantastic. If I could just transport you guys and say, do something like this at Orange and Teal, where you can have an audience coming and we have a proper a discussion with people putting in the 2 cents worth. I think these are all things that are worth talking about, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
This brave new world, if you will. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but let's talk about it and let's see how all these things can benefit us rather than hamper and creep us out.
Actually, with UBI, right, we kind of have a little experiment with it during COVID.
Yeah.
Right? During
We just got money.
The 9 months where they disperse out like $1,000 for everyone.
But right, like after, in actual UBI, they don't claw it back.
Hey, of course.
GST.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the US presidential hopeful Andrew Yang.
Yes.
Right. I watched some of this.
I
love
think,
this too.
she did make some sense in that, right?
Yeah.
You let these people have this money. It's not going to fritter away. How much? You're not going to take $700, $1,000, $2,000 and go for a trip to Paris, right? You're going to have to buy groceries.
Yeah.
You're going to have to buy your daily necessities. That money is then circulating in the community. It benefits everybody, the business owner, the guy that works in the store, and so on and so forth. So it's that kind of thinking, right? Rather than it being so dogmatic about it, especially with this PAP government, where the whole idea is nothing's for free, right? You've got to. No, it's not that things are free, but people need to eat. People need to survive. And these are all taboos, which I think we need to discuss. As I said, whether you're for or against it, I think it's only healthy as a society if we talk more about it and be open about it.
Yeah, my money all went back. I have to pay mortgage,
We
man.
absolutely should talk more about it because ever since young, especially in our generation, we've been inculcated to believe what you just said just now, that everything you must be deserving basically of everything that you enjoy.
Yeah. Then you ask the question, right? When you say you brought up this word deserving, right? Who deserves what? Right? How much is a human being worth? Right? The Prime Minister, how much is he worth? The lowly worker, how much is he worth? Those are all questions that we've got to ask, philosophical as it might be.
And I think sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, like so during the pandemic, right? Like we usually in Singapore, especially in Singapore, we have such a low opinion of people who who are like street sweepers, and then people who take out trash and stuff. But during the pandemic, right, they were the essential workers. Like all the lawyers can die and we'll still probably be okay. But if we didn't have like our healthcare workers and the people who clean our streets and all these essential workers,
the delivery people,
the delivery people, we would have been in like big shit. But the thing is, like, we don't value their work very much, and they're amongst the most lowly paid and most financially insecure group of our society.
And then you take a look at they're top bankers. What value do they add to society?
Yeah, what? Do they actually add value?
And this is where I think sometimes, when we put something out there, we tell people, no, that's valuable. That's what you should strive for, your stocks, your investments and everything. To what end, I ask? And this is where I think, sometimes we get our priorities all misplaced. But that is for society to question, to debate. And I come back to this point. I just think that it's dearth of it in Singapore here. And I think that is going to be our Achilles heel, if you will, going forward now. There's no culture of us questioning. And, as I said, you look at successful societies, it's always this questioning. It may not be chaotic kind of a place, but a place that constantly asks questions, because that's what life is all about, isn't it? Nothing is guaranteed. Your past success doesn't guarantee your future success, isn't it? So that kind of a culture, I think, is so missing in Singapore. Yeah.
Do you think there is still, in a sense, meritocracy in Singapore? Because I think we are actively attracting very, very rich people here, billionaires from other countries. They come here, park their wealth, and then I feel like it's getting to a point where the concept of trickle down economics doesn't really, when you look around you, you're like, where's the trickle down?
Yeah. Concept like meritocracy, it's so misused and misapplied, if you will. Sure, I mean, in that sense, if there are two people sitting together, even as somebody that's just you're having a conversation with, you want to say, hey, you have different skills, you have different talents, right? No two people are the same, and then you use, you employ them for different reasons and different aspects of the task that you want to take them on for. But then the problem with it is that after you've come up to succeed already, once you've succeeded, then meritocracy then becomes one which you pass it down
to the next
your
generation.
children,
yeah.
Right. So the very rich, I know, can literally move their houses, move homes to Bukit Timah area. Then you're within 1 kilometer of this top school. Right. Guess how much is it to move to the choicest district real estate in Singapore, right? Cost you an arm and leg. Very few people can afford it. Where is the meritocracy then, right? And then you put it into school, and then that school then begins to get branded, and then so on and so forth. Then you got money to pay for tuition. You go to all these big tuition centers right now that I see in all these malls that prices are scary, really scary. Then where is the meritocracy right now? I guess the analogy would be that 100-meter dash, right? Right. You want to start at the same point, but you can't have somebody starting 50 meters behind. Somebody starts at 50, and then you say finishing line is the same spot. It doesn't quite make sense, isn't it?
And it's very funny because like a lot of our ministers, like every school is a good school, but then they insult people from RI or whatever, And then, but like as somebody who was teaching for a while, right? Like the difference is so obvious when like a student comes in from a good school versus one from a neighborhood school. They're not at equal starting points, and very often, right? Like because I used to teach at a polytechnic level, I have to grade them equally, right? Because for example, they come in like year one, it's a basic class, but some of the kids from the really good schools who have extracurricular activities and all the materials and access to extra tuition or whatever, they can perform at such a high level that, you know, they automatically get A's. And then my neighborhood kids, right, they come in, they don't know what's Photoshop, they don't know this, they don't know that.
They're still struggling with the technical aspects.
Yeah, they don't even, they're really learning the program, whereas the other kid is, you know, just going off and going, you know, excelling or basically.
But like, I mean, we all teach in polytechnics, so at diploma level. So my trick to do that is really to figure out where they come from, and the people who instantly can get what you're trying to teach. I would push them, challenge them more.
Yeah, which is why I think that is unfair, because that's also what I do, because I want all my kids to do the best that they can, right? But in a classroom setting, I have 19 minutes. You know, I have to teach you the basic stuff for the people who don't know, and then the people who do know, they can perform so much better because they're not concentrating on learning; they're concentrating on doing, right? So when I grade them, right, all the kids from the good schools, they get A's. And then my neighborhood kids get C's or D's because comparatively speaking, their work is not up to standard. But if I was just teaching a class full of people who don't know any of it, their work would be like B or A, you know?
Sure.
So like, I think that's a very giant issue that has to be addressed. I mean, to some extent, the grading metric is calibrated to help that a little.
Yeah,
but
therein
still,
I think lies that problem in the sense of terms of what resources have been provided during the formative years as students, you know. And I want to emphasize the point. I'm not saying that everybody is the same. Not everybody is equal in terms of talent, in terms of our perspective, in terms of how we deal with things. But what I'm just saying is that the resources are provided for them to get that head start, and then to be able to continue to push on, that makes a difference, right? But when you get up to a certain stage where, again, as I said, your formative years are been hampered because of lack of resources, or even your parental, approach to things, your guidance, and so on and so forth, that then creates a problem, which we've got to, as I said, grapple with and see how. And that's what we've been talking a lot about, the education system and how it begins to create that huge divide, which is actually getting wider.
Do you think we should follow China's example and just ban all tuition centers and tuition teachers?
I didn't know that China actually did that. Huh?
Yeah, China did that. But it created like a black market, of course.
Black market tuition.
Yeah, and I think, when you do something like this, you create an underground kind of thing. Again, I think a more intelligent approach would be to ask the question, what is an educated person, right? What kind of person do we want to produce after having gone through 10 years, 12 years of our education system? That is that fundamental question I think we've got to answer before. If all we think of is just grades, and grades we equate it with financial reward, then done deal, really. Not hard to figure out, right? Get your best and the brightest, groom them like crazy, give them all the resources, and then we succeed. Churn out scholars and put them into your whatever companies or ministries that you want them in. But if you want society to to progress as a whole, then you've got to be asking the question: what is school? Right? School, are we pitting students against students, or are we just trying to figure out how to get everybody to realize the true potential, to really achieve what they can be, whatever their level is? People excel to different, but have people then know themselves, and rather than rank schools, I know that they don't do it officially, but whenever you have exams, when you have your ranking in class, top boy, don't know how many percentage and everything, and then you tell everybody, what class you go to, and so on and so forth. Even though you try to camouflage everything by giving your classes now different names rather than A, B, C, D, which we had to go through, right? Yeah. Parents instinctively, they know.
Yeah, they know one.
And then you have your exams. No matter what you tell people, no midterms, it doesn't matter. I know I've got a final exam. You better work hard, right? And that's a kind of grueling, rat race that we subject our students to. And I can tell you seriously, it's no wonder that you have all these mental health issues, isn't it?
It's interesting. Also, I spoke with a home tutor some years back, and he's actually saying that increasingly in North American universities, especially those that are really difficult to get in, they don't really look at your grades anymore because they expect or they understand that everyone who's applying for my school is going to be at a top tier. They're looking for something that's different. So, they're looking for young people who are political. They're looking for young people who have, worked for charities and have their, they basically have their
extracurricular stuff.
they have their life sorted out better than some 50-year-old, who's facing retirement. So they're looking for those people to get in. So that to build their school's brand as well. So, like parents who push their kids to score A's for everything may not necessarily get into Harvard, in the future.
But just to push back on that, I think there's the expectation that your grades have to be really good, and then on top of these extra stuff, right?
And that puts a tremendous additional pressure on our students that's sometimes quite unbearable. And I come back to this point that I've made for years already. You were talking about exams, right? You've gone through it, whether it's your PSLE or your O levels, your A levels, whatever in between here. Everything is about memorizing facts, right? And it's no secret that you got your 10-year series. What's that for, right? You go and look for model answers, then you try to memorize it.
I think Singapore has one of the biggest assessment book publishing industry, if I'm not wrong.
Right, and then you get into your exam paper, you sit in front of it, and you hope to hell that the question comes out. And then you hope that you can remember all those things that you memorize and you regurgitate it.
And you don't remember it you don't remember it after the exam. After the exam, everything just goes out of your brain. What? Yes. I don't remember anymore.
And you know all these things, right? But hey, that's what I'm saying. That's how we tie in with AI, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I made the point, even before AI, because now you're competing against Google. You want to ask anything, you don't ask your teacher, you ask Google. I kid you not. I went to the hospital once for a condition that I was in, right? And then the specialist was sitting there, he was typing on his computer, and was just, talking to me about what's, the diagnosis and so on and so forth. Then he turned his monitor to me and said, Google. But this is where I'm saying, you want things memorized. You got to compete against the computer, and how, computers cannot even play and beat you in chess. Right? So this is where I'm asking, that whole fundamental premise of what is education. It may have been during the years of industrialization, right? That you needed information, you needed knowledge, you needed know-how, and again, But now we're living in a very different age, living in a very different world, and we've got to have these conversations going forward about where are we headed for.
Is there any, in your research, is there any other country which is a model of education that you feel more inclined to compared to what we have here?
I don't know. I keep thinking that we are always in Singapore here looking to other people for leadership. They may not have the answers. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just, why can't we, as small as we are, it's never been a problem, right? In terms of inquiry, in terms of acquisition of knowledge, in terms of application of knowledge. If size of your country, population is what is limiting us, then how do you get Sweden? How do you get Finland? How do you get Norway? How do you get Israel? Populations that are New Zealand, not populations that are, more or less there with ours. But, achieving great strides in future thinkers, in thought leaders, in terms of how we apply science and all these things, it shouldn't be a barrier. What is a barrier is that political culture. And that's why I come back again. I know that, but it is reality. It is a fact that the government sits on the people, and because of its own political self-interest, very narrow interest, don't allow Singaporeans to really realize our full potential. When I really think that, our future lies in this. And I just, if only we could have people in there that just halfway enlightened and see that political control, it may be good now in the sense of power and wealth and that kind of thing. But think of it in the longer term and how it's going to be detrimental to our society.
So, question, right? Okay, none of us are parents here, right? You're all like child-free people.
Cat parents.
Cat parents.
Yeah.
Cat parents, yeah. They know how to like educate cats, I guess, or not. But you've brought up 3 kids, right? And like I think one thing that was very memorable to me, I have a godson. He's I think in secondary 1 this year, and when he was a child, right, his parents were very like chill about his schoolwork. You know, they didn't like enroll him in multiple, you know, preschool class and stuff. So he was at those like forest play schools where he was like so happily engaging with the world around him, you know. And when time came for primary 1, right, he was actually excited to go to school. You know, he was like, oh, I can't wait to get homework. You know, I can't wait to do homework. And then after 2 weeks in school, right, you see the entire curiosity and spirit sucked out of him. And he started to dread going to school because there's so much pressure to perform academically. And I think he has like slight learning disabilities in some spots, right? Like, but he's a very bright kid. You know, when you talk to him, you're like, oh, he's a very intelligent kid. And so how? Okay, I mean, because the system change takes a very long time, and you cannot wait for the system to change before you do something on your part as a parent, right, to help your child. So what can parents actually do to reinforce or to mitigate the harm, I guess, that is done? Not harm, but you know, like the impact of our education on the kids, or rather that very oppressive atmosphere of, you know, restraint.
You know, oftentimes as a parent, and I do this looking back because I know I've made my own mistakes, you know, bring them, and nobody can be perfect. We learn as we go along, even as parents. But the one thing I found it to be a very important guiding post was the idea that your children are individuals in their own right? You are very different from your siblings. Not to mention your friends, your parents, different personalities, whether you're more outgoing, more gung-ho, or more reserved, more introvert, that kind of thing. And this is where we have to realize that everybody grows up, and they ought to grow up to be their own persons, whatever those persons turn out to be, right? And as a parent, your best gift to them, I think, is to encourage them to pursue their own wants, their own drives, their passions, which may be very different from yours. So I try in that sense. I don't always succeed. I must admit it up front right now that I don't always. I try not to impose what I want, because they're not some things for you to you know, it's not your extension, isn't it? And you just encourage them to live their lives the best way that they see how, and then trust them to go out and pursue. That's the best thing that you can do for them. And then not just say, hey, make sure you get your A's out. Now you go to tuition class and you make sure you come back, you finish your homework. Yeah, maybe, okay, you try to inculcate that sense of hard work and so on and so forth. But you've got to also be able to moderate your expectations and know that, you know, they have to live their own lives ultimately. I'm not speaking from experience, obviously, but when my friends are talking about their kids, right, and you know, because I went through like secondary school with my friends, right, and they're all like freaking like aliens or don't care about class lah. They go to the polyclinic to get MC and skip school. They're those kind of people, right? And when now they are having their kids, they're like, oh my God, now I finally understand why my mom is so angry when I skip school. Because I think there's that pressure that to make your kids succeed, because you're afraid that in the future they will not be able to do well in life. Yeah.
No, it's also your offspring, right? Like you want your offspring to stand out against.
Yeah, you want them to do the best
like
that they can,
genes,
whichever
right?
that means. And in Singapore, it's often a very academic focused
that's true.
definition of success.
And I think that's the difference between what permissive parenting is versus what authoritative. Mind you, it's authoritative, not authoritarian parenting. That difference
Right.
is there. You've got to sometimes just draw the fine line and it's the hardest thing, because there isn't a 10-year series for parents. You go and you flip behind and say, oh, the answer to this question is then you do this and everything will turn out well. No, we're dealing with human beings, and human beings have the myriad of emotions and expectations and so on. So you have that situation whereby you just got to titrate sometimes, right? You just let go a little bit and pull back, and then once you find yourself you pulling back too much, let go again, that kind of thing, and hopefully things work out. There isn't a one size fits all kind of thing.
Okay, I'm just gonna read some questions from the live chat. So one of it, without focusing on grades, what kind of benchmark would you implement to maximize the average Singaporean potential?
I think it's important for us to measure ourselves according to what we are capable of, that the potential that we can be. And it takes a special system, special curriculum, people who know what education is about to bring out that potential, to motivate our students. And not to say A, B, C. A is the best, B, okay, still, C, mediocre, that kind of thing. And then just don't have this system where we're comparing, one child to another, right? Have them compete with themselves. How they can continue to improve on what they've done yesterday, right? And then going forward to make sure that, their grades are kept to themselves. And if there needs to be grades, right? And that it's for their consumption and their consumption only. And then don't just go, oh, next year, because you're doing so well, so next year you go to this class. Next year, you're not so good, you go to this lower stream. All that affects that kind of thinking in terms of, I must do well in exams. And there's nothing else in life because what about things like other skills in life, right? How you handle pressure, right? How you cope with mental pressure, or conditions in life, disappointments. All these skills are not taught to our students, our children. And those, I think, are life skills that you really need to. And what about, okay, you're talking about knowing how to manage your finances, things like that. Okay, as children, maybe too young, you don't know. But after some time, you come in the real world, say, oh, yeah, my gosh, there's something called budget, isn't it?
Yeah, right? You're like, huh? Yeah. Well, I guess it's like the 150 a day, what can you buy? Kind of thing that you have to figure it out.
What do you get in recess?
If I buy the sparkly stationery pen, then I cannot buy lunch.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But okay, going back to that educational thing, right? Like, I think we also have to be aware that we cannot keep asking educators to teach all of these things. I think there are a lot of my friends who are educators in the local system, they get tasked to do so many things that are outside of what they are they actually trained for. For example, during the pandemic, they had to teach people how to use Zoom and then coordinate the class lessons and lesson plans. And then when there was racial disharmony happening in Singapore, then they have to teach about how to integrate racial harmony in Singapore and how to talk about racism when these are actually very specialized things that other people have careers doing. And also mental health, it in a way, how do teachers teach that, right? Where does the role of the school end and where does the role of the parent begin, actually?
No, that's a national discussion, national debate that ought to be there. And I'm not talking about the kinds that the government prescribes for
it's
us, right?
Can we have your opinions?
Yeah.
Huh? What?
Yeah. And then you pick and choose, select the people that you want. Yeah. Views whom you want to hear. I'm talking about from the really literally now ground up, where we can hear the input of educationists, educators, and have this honest debate about all these matters. You're talking about racism, that kind of thing, and then one situation happens and then everybody just say racial harmony day, that kind of thing. But is there something else that needs to be talked about? And what about, as I said, I can't keep coming back to this because it's a huge issue in our society right now. It's mental health, things like that. What are we putting? And I know teachers quietly tell me that they see among their students.
Yeah.
O levels, A levels, and
Yep.
that's where teenagers begin to, you begin to develop hormonal changes and everything. It adds on that pressure. Oh, are we having that discussion? And then here we are trying to refer them to counselor this, counselor that, and then is that helping? So these are things that we need to address and talk about.
And very often, I think the system is just overwhelmed. Like they have one counselor or two counselors for the entire school, where and like mental health is not just like you go for one session and oh my god I'm cured, right?
Yeah.
Like often these kids have to go for multiple sessions, and then you've got a pile up, right? Because there are so many students in the school who need counseling, right? So I think given the crazy amount of money that we have, we are not a poor country. I think we can afford to spend a lot more on mental health than we are currently.
And at this point in time, I'm not even asking you for handouts. Just let me use my MediSave for therapy.
Yeah.
It's just something as simple as that, It's my own money anyway, right? MediSave.
No, but it has to last you until you die.
Yeah, but if I don't go for therapy, I
You'll
might
be
die.
dead anyways. Yeah. I know, which is like the fucking crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
Because it is your money, but it's locked there, and then you can only spend it in a certain way. Like I go for dental treatment, right? Like you can't even spend like money on certain treatments. You have to pay out of pocket. Like it's only for very select things like I don't know, wisdom teeth tooth removal or whatever that you can use. Like as if like
It's like
other
necessities,
things, as if
necessities,
other things don't cause me pain and discomfort. Yeah.
Just don't get me started on the medis.
Angry already.
No, the medical, side of funding,
Right,
finances, side of it. We talked about at length about it. But then, when you, again, it's all related, this mental health thing, teenagers, students come up to me and say, that school counselor by sweet one. It's just, it's there, and then they go to them, and then, okay, I'll make an appointment with you. I don't know that, but that's, they're saying that it's not a help to them when they need something a lot deeper and a lot
But I think
more than that.
Like as with what Angie says, that a lot of these things, therapy and stuff like that, really needs a lot of sessions. And from what I understand, most of the time teenagers don't have that patience. They feel like they know something is wrong, but they want like an instant fix. It seem to not understand that you need to really go through a lot more.
I think it's the hormones, like
the hormones doesn't help as well.
The level of patience increase as you age. When you're 16, you're like, oh my god, why is everything so against me? The whole world is against me. I hate the world.
Like if you're 30 years old, you probably understand. Okay, it takes time.
Which is why you see like activists being so like rah when they're young, and then when you get older, you're okay lah.
Yeah, I guess that's where I think school psychologists are important, but the numbers must be there so that they're properly equipped to be able to handle some of these things. And now students come and go, and then they say it's no use to them.
So just another comment from the live chat, and I think this ties into the mental health as well. From Sheila, not so much a question but a reflection. It is just not safe to fail in Singapore. There isn't support if we don't make it in the system. The fear makes the parent push children hard to succeed. And I think that stress.
I'll tell you, you look at the biggest success stories in the world, the one thing that is common right through. You read the histories, you read the biographies, you read the developmental stages. I'm not talking about individuals also, including organizations, companies, and they just made it top. You name it, Apple, Google. The one thing that has the commonality right through. Failure. Everybody had to go through that. And failure was nothing, it didn't deter them from wanting to do more. And that's why I keep, some politician from the other side once commented that I was a failed this, failed that.
Do you want to name him?
I think it's just good to just focus on what was said.
Right.
We just like to stir shit here.
But that's the point, you see. We always, and then they always define success as what they are, what they've achieved right now. That's success. If you haven't achieved what I've achieved, you fail. And it's that kind of just not only just the narrow definition of what failure is, but also how it applies to you in life. that makes that huge difference about how we see ourselves as society, how we propel ourselves going forward, and how we mold our future generations. That is, I think, at the core of it. We've got to get away from this whole idea that, and it's been very pervasive, right? Our parents, it's very inculcated, it's baked into our national DNA. But I must say, it all had started from the fact that, hey, we achieved what we achieved as a nation, not because of but because of our own work, and nobody gave us anything, which isn't true. Okay, which isn't true. Okay, that's a myth. That we didn't have any resources, because you think about it, the fact, how many countries is it can claim that we are nicely situated between Atlantic and the Pacific, right? And the ships all have to come through, and not only that we've got deep seashells, and
We got geographical privilege.
right? And that one, as I, you're going, it's not like oil where you one day run out. It's this, you can actually, it's used, in ad infinitum, that kind of thing. So we've got that natural resource. So let's not, just toot our own horn too loudly in that sense. But at the same time, also know that, yes, we've got to look at how we're going to move ahead. And times have changed. And we've got to have a different thinking, different paradigm in terms of how we see ourselves going forward.
There's this anecdote that just came to my mind, and it's from a friend who's also an educator in a secondary school. And what she told me was that she teaches the NT classes. Back when, is there still NT right now? I'm not sure.
I think
but
there's still
there is still, right? Like so back when this was a couple of years ago, she was telling me, right, like she teaches the NT classes, and she loves teaching the NT classes, but they're very different from like the normal classes, because the way that you manage the class is very different, right? So, but one time there was this I guess person who was formulating lesson plans for the class, and this person came from a very prestigious like secondary school, right? And then this person made lesson plans as if she's teaching a normal class. Right. So when she tried to implement the lesson plan, right, it failed terribly, because a lot of teaching in classes like that, right, where the students are not like academically inclined, is about classroom management. So, like the whole idea of just one narrow definition of success, or one narrow definition of like how things should work, right, especially coming from a point of view of a person who's never actually experienced what's happening on the ground, which I think can be extrapolated to our political scene, because they do come from a very narrow select band of people, compared to, like last time our MPs were like what, farmers and tradespeople, right? And I think, do you see like the impact on the ground, like a lot of the impact on the ground from policies that work only in very certain ideal conditions?
And I think that is the saddest part of it. I come back to this point about our potential as a society, where we actually really at that point just kind of get the creme de la creme, if you will, and then and then the rest of them, you guys, you call them lumpen masses.
I like being a lump.
and that's where I think enormous amount of potential talent always did. And look, don't take it from me, but you remember Steve Wozniak?
Oh yes.
Steve Jobs' partner.
Yeah.
Started Apple. Can you say you cannot start Apple could not have started in Singapore, because the creative elements were all not there. And if you read some of them, they were all contrarians, dissidents. They were just didn't go to school. Steve Jobs walked around barefoot and long hair, that kind of thing. He'd be laughed out of class in Singapore, that kind of thing, right? And this is where I'm saying reality in life is very different from what we sometimes would like to impose it on. You go through this primary 1, 2, 3, 4, get good grades, and then you do go to this stream, and then you go to that stream, and then come out, you change the world. It doesn't quite work that way. Human beings are, unpredictable. This whole world is unpredictable, right? try to see what's going to happen to you in tomorrow.
Might not be here.
This is what I'm just trying to say, but I'm not saying that there shouldn't be rules in place for us to make society just, governable and workable, that kind of thing. But there's a balance in there. With too much of it, then you're going to stifle all kind of creativity, innovation, and that's where we've got to find that balance. And I'm just saying we're just way too much on one side right now.
I would love to see a far more diverse amount of people in the leadership. No, it wouldn't be cool if you have a MP who's actually a hawker who has found success in that arena, right? And then he or she can bring their the knowledge that they have gained into policy making.
Okay, let's go back to that MediSave issue, because I feel like it's such an important topic. Because we are living longer, right? And then as we age, there are more medical issues that will crop up. And with the cost of inflation, like the cost of living now, inflation and all that, right? Like sometimes I think, am I even able to retire at all? In France right now, I mean, like riots and protests have been raging for I think a month or so, was it? And it's because the government proposed to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. And this is something that actually Singapore has already done, like our retirement age, right, was raised to 65, and then it's going to be 70 by 2030. And then is it going to be like 80 or 85 when it's for time for us to retire, right? And I can kind of understand, right? Because in France, they have a pension system, and then they have a falling birth rate. So it's very difficult to say that, hey, man, we've got infinite resources and we can afford to pay out the pension. But how do we resolve this issue?
Well, I think you have this huge problem of that issue that we brought up, land cost, isn't it? Because as I see it, the younger generation that come up, you want to buy your BTO, right? Think of how much your BTO is, right? And then think of the interest that you've got to pay as you walk through the years. By the time you finish paying off, right, your last installment, how much do you have left in your CPF?
Nothing.
And then that whole idea of CPF started is when in the 1950s, I think, was just for you to put aside a bit of, and it started about 5% for your wages, put it inside as a nest egg. And then it started growing. Then the government said, hey, it's a good pool of money. So they wanted to use it. Not just for housing. Now you can use it for MediSave. At one point, I'm not sure if you can still use it for investments and that kind of thing.
I think you still can, right?
Still can.
Right?
And for education as well.
Yeah. So this is where we're trying to get at your pension saving scheme has now become, this huge source of finances for the government to tap into. And this is where I worry, you see. And then, your BTO prices keeps going up. The question is not just on MediSave. When you retire, then what happens, you see? And now we're getting into all this gig economy already.
And a lot of these people have no savings.
Right.
And they don't really contribute to CPF.
No, that's why they're pushing CPF for gig workers under 25.
Yeah. So you have your huge swaths of your population here driving Grab, delivery and everything. I worry, but in terms of what happens,
I'm just going to ask a question from Reggie. He asked you to comment on PSP's HDB proposal. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it.
Yeah, well, Reggie, I want to also refer you to a policy paper we put up years before anybody else came up with.
Yes.
And it's not one of those 2-page kind of thing. We actually came up with a whole document about it. It's called housing.
The buyback?
Sorry?
Is it
yes,
the buyback?
Yes. Not the buyback. We proposed something which we call a non-open market.
Oh, yes.
Right. And we wanted it, our public housing, all right, to be something that people buy, but you are not able to sell it in the open market for profit, because that's your home. It's not a place that you it's not an asset. Yeah. And because then everything drives up. Then your resale prices become so expensive. And then people just scramble to buy $1 million HDB house, and that just drives up prices and so on. And this is where I'm saying, so you buy it at a much lower price. But when you want to sell it for one reason or another, you have to sell it back to the government, but not at a profit basis. Of course, everything else, with minus your occupation and years of occupation and so on and so forth. Then you leave a whole chunk of money still in your CPF, so that when you retire, you're still able to use it. Because right now, they say, oh, you're asset rich but cash poor, that kind of thing. What are you going to eat? Your bricks and your wires in your house. Not possible.
Does this only apply to like the new build, like for your proposal?
Yeah,
It only
yeah,
apply-
yeah.
What about the ones that are already currently in the system? Because to be honest, right, I can buy
Yeah.
right now if I want to, but I look at the prices and I feel like crying because I'm like, why am I paying $500,000 for a 3-room flat?
Sure.
Yeah.
Or, it's insane.
More than
And-
$500,000 if you include
Yeah.
rentals and everything.
And our proposal included a scheme whereby existing owners, you've got already, right? The government can compensate you, and it will work out, formula for them. But people don't lose out. Existing owners don't lose out as well, because they can't be put in like $400,000-$500,000, and then now you bring down housing prices, and then what's happened to the money? So we've got a formula in there for. So look, I know it's boring and that kind of thing, but do avail. So we've got executive summaries, and then
Where can they
everything.
find this?
Just on our website, and the links I just put up on my Facebook as well. So go in and just take a look. If not, just get in touch with me. I'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction too.
Awesome. I think we'll post a link in our description box later. But going back to that whole idea of retirement, right? Like, I think, gig economy workers not being able to retire, or I've heard so many of my friends saying that they're not even going to retire in Singapore. Like they're going to go overseas because it's much cheaper there. And I think the cost of living crisis, if you can call it a crisis, I guess, kind of erodes our patriotism for the country. Like it erodes the want to even stay in this country and contribute to it, even though we kind of can. A lot of my friends are doing pretty well financially, but they're like, why would I want to stay here, right? Like it's gonna eat into my savings when I retire. I'm not gonna generate new income unless I invest or something, and they're just gonna leave. And so I think, is it important, that we keep our citizens here, because we're importing at a pretty good rate anyways?
Yeah.
Is it important to have native Singaporeans in Singapore?
It's one of the saddest things, isn't it? That a place that you grew up in, your sights and sounds, your memories, all this come from something, right? Right, and then when you retire, your best days of your life, you've contributed to this society, and now you find yourself having to uproot. What about your community? Right, that's one thing that we cannot discount, right? It's not that easy as well. But then I can understand too, because due to financial pressure and just having to survive, you really have to uproot sometimes, and just in order to get by from month to month. But this is where I'm trying to the whole idea of what being a citizen here is all about. Is it just purely transactional, a utilitarian kind of approach whereby, okay, well, you're good, you contribute to the economy, you live. And once you put out the pasture,
Isn't
bye-bye.
Was it Khaw Boon Wan who said that you can just put your parents across the causeway?
That's the whole mentality that it's just so shocking, and that's the other thing about it. So then we get people, not just the retirees, your younger folks. It's this lifestyle is impossible, it's so stressful, and so they leave.
Yeah.
But then we find we have not enough folks and everything. Then we import them. Foreigners come in, and that creates that whole friction. Foreigners should be here to complement the main body, the skeleton. But I remember Prime Minister was saying, without these foreigners, our economy would collapse. He's stating a fact. How did we get up to that point in the first place? Right? Our people should be able to drive the economy, be the drivers of the economy. And then wherever we have a shortfall for that kind of thing, which inevitably as a global city, you will face. Okay, let's be upfront about that. Then you do that. Right? But you cannot have saying that, without these foreigners, our economy will pancake. doesn't quite make sense to me. And you've had what, 30, 40, 50 years of uninterrupted rule for you to devise a system to make this work, our education system for make it work. And then we find ourselves in this pickle right now where, we cannot survive without foreign talent. That is, I think, something has gone wrong somewhere, which they still won't admit.
So I think Mr. Leong from PSP has been accused of xenophobia a lot when he brings up issues of immigration and like versus jobs creation and how many jobs are going to the foreigners, right? And how do we mitigate that tension between locals and foreigners? Because to some extent we really do need them, given like how our population is not replacing itself right now. I think this year our TFR is at our lowest ever. It's like 1.0.
1.04.
Yeah, it's like super duper low. Yeah. How do we then manage this integration of new immigrants to Singapore? And because if we look across the world, right, currently, especially in Europe, in the US, the far right is gaining a lot of traction because of immigration issues, right? How do we and it to some extent, right? There are countries with what's that word, where there's homogenous populations, right? White people or whatever. But we've always been a migrant country, right? Like our ancestors came from elsewhere, and a so-called melting pot of people with like lots of diversity. How do we mitigate that tension?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the saying, right, sticks and stones, isn't it? Because this is just pure politics. The government, PAP, will put labels on you, but that's straw man argument.
Okay.
Whereby they put labels on things which you do not say. And we've said repeatedly that we're not calling from zero immigration, but we're saying that there must be some kind of level where just bring some sanity into this whole process now, right? As I said, it goes back now to more than just how many people do we need? What kind of talent do we need? We've got to go back into and look at a more fundamental issue as how did we come up to this stage in the first place? I remember once again, the PM was mentioning something that we don't have enough engineers or something like this. Well, ask yourself, why did we have shortage of engineers? Why? Because were they emphasizing that everything about the financial service sector and that kind of stuff? Everybody was, all, in more patois here, chiong to that sector, and they're leaving this whole very neglected part of it. And then we panic and say, oh, now we've got to have, more people in this area. And then in the meantime, because we were a shortage of engineers, you just kept bringing in engineers and then, paying them very cheap, low wage levels. And then that created that whole problem of this spiral downwards, and no Singaporeans wanted to come because wages were so low, that kind of thing. So you've got to ask that more fundamental question. Is that, you start a fire, and then, you try to, get the person, the arsonist, to come up, and then you just try to fight fires, run, and you start more fires, and you fight more fires, that kind of thing. I keep saying, just make sure we get to the fundamental root cause of it. That's only when we can solve the problem. And one of those things is this: look, where is our economy headed? Where is society headed? Are we just continuing looking for more and more manpower instead of relying on brain power? And where is our society going to benefit from all this?
Right. Sorry, I'm just going to read out a question. The economy collapse might be because Singaporeans do not wish to be cleaners and manual laborers. Is this a direction we want to push Singaporeans into?
Into what? I'm sorry.
Into like jobs like cleaning and manual labor and stuff like that, which is traditionally held by immigrant workers. Yeah.
Well, nobody is saying that we need to push people into certain sectors, but certain things need to get done. It's just how we value our workers, correct? If we keep telling people that picking up trash is very low level, you don't want to do that kind of thing, then there's a certain stigma. There's just no pride. I'm not saying that people will just kick their heels and whistle all the way to just, but there are ways of doing that, isn't it? You automate it right now. Look, in my own cafe,
Pick up the club
on very many occasions, is tie up the trash bag. I drag it down all the way to the refuse center, throw it away, and look, it's not that something I do every day, but still, you take pride in whatever that you're doing, and it's no shame. It really is no shame, right? If people see me, they recognize me, they see me pushing out this trash bin full of black bags and everything, I say hi,
Do people come up to you and say this is not becoming, or like shouldn't be seen with a trash bag?
No. But they'll say hi. They
Why
say,
are you doing
want
this?
to talk? Let's walk. Take a walk with me, or go down that cargo lift, and then very stinky place and everything. But it's how you approach this whole thing. You know what I'm saying? So if you just find this all very shameful kind, and that's why I say we don't, garbage collectors. Right? Sometimes we can do it ourselves too, isn't it? Right? Make it easy, and then you've got automated things. It doesn't have to be a very downcast kind of thing. Right? So, it's how we approach and we see.
Just as a follow-up, do you think the low esteem that Singapore society holds for essential workers like these, like say garbage collectors and so on, is because of the pay? Because in my experience, like I've got a friend who is from Canada. He's never gone through his college degree, but progressively he has gone through his plumbing certification. Right, and he's making more money than college grads.
And also like in Aussie, when I was studying there, right, I realized that there was no stigma whatsoever if you're a garbage
I was just going to
because they're paid well.
I had some friends who went over to Australia, and then they looked at this building was under construction, right, and they see a few white guys sitting
it's
over
all
there,
Australian construction workers.
and then he was at the lunch break, taking the coffee and drinking, taking a break over there, and say, hey, I don't mean to use derogatory, but how it is, right? Say, hey, I'm more also do this kind of thing. In Singapore, you only see the Bangladeshis and that kind of. So it's that whole kind of stigma that we attach to. It's just very unbecoming having that kind of vocation. But I know my gardener last time when I was in Melbourne for a year or two, didn't just take care. Wasn't rich enough to afford one. But the landscape, how it was, it's just like just taking on the common property. He came in, was a white guy. Just trimming the bushes, shredding and making chips out of the wood and everything. You sit down, we have conversation. You could talk to me about social issues. Very well educated guy, but took pride in his work. But this is my problem here, and it just didn't come out from nowhere. It's this whole thing that's come down from the government, and I say this because again, another minister, again I won't name names. Everybody knows who it is anyway. I shouldn't just coy about it. But in any case, they would saying, oh, he hasn't held a full-time job. Okay. But at that time, I was making an income. I could feed my family. I was doing my writing, my books, I was selling my books. But that's the whole mentality, you see. Somehow, if you don't do what they're doing, right? Making the big bucks, going to a spanking office and so on and so forth. Somehow or other you are somehow, below grade or something. And I'm just making, oh, you don't have a job. It's work, You try to write in, you do research, you think about the future, things that you have to grapple with. And then, okay, like
you were doing what you were doing as an academic, only that you're not employed, right?
School, in a sense, I was more writing more on my books, and rather than being employed in an institution, drawing a monthly salary. But at the same time, it's this work. And then when you sell your books, that's the income that you use, and it's still work. But somehow you get trashed for it, and I think that's the whole kind of, and it seeps into your subconscious, the Singaporean subconscious. If you're not doing that, your 9-to-5 job,
and your self-esteem also, right? If you're being seen in that kind of light by everyone, and you start feeling bad about yourself.
That's why I say it's no less, and I know it's a very strong word, but it's the disease here, and it's disease that's no less emanating from your very top echelons of government, and I think that's very, very unhealthy for society.
I think the thing about like taking pride in your work is also the fact that productivity actually increases. When you know what you're doing. Like we have this habit of employing low skilled labor, and a lot of actually the Bangladeshi workers were not even trained in construction. A lot of them actually have degrees in other things. But because they couldn't find jobs in their home countries, they come over here, and they're not like skilled labor, right? Trained for construction. And so what happens is that like I have a bit of experience being like a safety supervisor. So you have to employ like one person to stand there just to make sure that everything is safe, right? Whereas if you actually had a skilled laborer, they know what to do. I don't need to be there, and I think like there are a lot of complaints about the quality of the BTOs currently, right? There's a lot of issues that people have to rectify, and I think a lot of it is also because there's no skilled labor, and the workers there, they're very badly paid. They can't even have like a proper meal. Have you seen like what they're eating every day? It's just like a giant pile of white rice and curry, and maybe a little bit of vegetables for very intensive manual labor under our fucking Singapore weather. So I wouldn't blame them, for the quality of work that they do, but it's an issue, and we're paying a lot of money for it as well.
Again, as I said, it all comes down to your whole mindset and how you see and you value human beings rather than as, your economic output skill set that you have. You see people as people, human beings as human beings, or do we see them merely as digits, economic digits that can contribute to this, It's the saddest thing. I mean, I know that when we were renovating the space, Rochester Mall there, I remember during lunchtime, they were doing their, knocking and drilling and so on and so forth. So I bought some makan for them, and and I said, and eat, and brought in our tables already. And he just would not, or he didn't dare to sit at the table. I said, sit table and eat. I've got the chance. We just sit and I wanted to sit with them and just talk to them. But he'd take his packet of whatever that I bought for him, forgotten. He'd go to the corner and sit on the floor. And he said, no, don't do that. But he just feels very uncomfortable, you see. So it's sometimes how we value. And I know he's not Singaporean, but he's a human being. It doesn't mean that we take care only of our own kind, isn't it? But this is where I think it's a very sad commentary. And I hope that things will change and, for better or for worse, we start this whole endeavor to try to change.
By the way, it was a pretty cool thing that you did to treat those uncles and aunties to like a meal. At Orange and Teal. It's
an ongoing thing, right? Where you treat the cleaners in the mall.
Yeah. But then the backstory is that sometimes they feel very uncomfortable coming in. Right? It says, hey, you tap out for what's that? Okay lah. Then
why
do they? I since it.
But where does that sense of embarrassment come from? Is it because they're not used to going to fine restaurants, or is it because the mall like landlords are like, why are you?
I don't know. That part I'm not quite sure, but I know that they're wearing their uniform. Sometimes their uniform, and then if you go down to the it's malls, you walk around, it's always nice and bright and airy and that kind of thing. And then you go down to the things, everything is dark and smelly and everything. I don't know whether they're very conscious of the fact that they might, don't look good or smell good, that kind of thing. So they resisted. But, I managed to persuade them, said, just come, don't worry about it. I'll sit with you. But that's the whole, as I said, it's not something which I'm terribly proud of it. Own country.
So
my friend has a comment. It's like he says, in Singapore we use our jobs to prove ourselves to society. The higher you go, the more OT you do, the more productivity you achieve. The better it is. So there's no need for work-life balance.
That's very sad. I don't want to live that life.
Yeah, but Lee Kuan Yew will be proud of you see.
Okay, so another question. Would the proliferation of Singaporeans in traditionally lower end work, even if we increase the esteem of said work, create an increased cost of living? Buses in Australia cost $8 per trip.
Yeah, there's this whole notion about if your fees or your prices you pay are lower, it means better. But you've got to understand there's somebody behind that counter or that wheel. It could be your dad, it could be your brother, it could be your mother doing those tasks. You see, what are they worth? Right? So everybody comes in and says, no, I'm not willing to pay so expensive. Okay, right? You pay less, or everybody makes less. But if the prices are lower, then it's okay. Everybody remains happy. But if your prices go up, right, and your wages don't go up, that's where the problem is.
Which is right now.
Yeah. So I know it can be hugely expensive, say in Monte Carlo, right? But wages there are also higher, isn't it? Right. So it's just a matter of that balance in there. I've known right now that you know, people come express shock, you know, that things are even more expensive than in Tokyo.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And yet we have amas, agongs cleaning your table for measly wages. It was only of late that we put so much pressure that they start talking about progressive wage models and so on and so forth. But for a long time, you know, and my question is that why do we have people actually, foreigners actually come in and express shock and they say, oh my God, how come you see this old person cleaning my, you know, and some of them are tottering already, you know what I mean? Then you got to ask your question, say, how is it that, you know, we have come to a stage where they can't even retire, you know? And I talked to the cleaners, my cleaners all in, the cleaners at the mall, all 60s, in the 70s. And somehow one of them was even 85, just cleaning their ass. Ask him, hey, bo bian now, what to do?
You see, on the ground, it's a very different story than what's painted in mainstream media. Oh, we want to increase the retirement age. But some people, they do want to work. You know, no, if not, what else would they do with their life?
They don't want to. Yeah, they collect cardboard for exercise. You know, it's not because they need the few cents per kg. Okay, so hold on. Let me just. Oh, by the way, it's already almost 1 p.m. now. Dr. Chee, do you have anywhere to be? Because we've got some more questions.
Go ahead, time.
Awesome.
I'm here, might as well go the whole hog.
Awesome. I'm just gonna ask the question from our stories. Sorry, let me just.
Oh, so previously they were from YouTube. Then this one is from IG, is it?
Yeah, this was
It's
from
from IG.
So this is from
Okay.
IG. Do you get lesser work opportunities when you work as an opposition member? Do you get ostracized or discriminated?
It depends on what era you're talking about. When I first started off, that was a no-no. And the whole society, because there was an era where there's no social media, you just don't pick up your phone and there's people comments and then just give the support. Or, it was just, Straits Times, 联合早报, MediaCorp. There wasn't MediaCorp at the time, it's Channel 5, Channel 8.
Yeah.
And that was it. We were at the mercy and that kind of thing. And so at that time, during that time, it was the stigmatization, that victimization that was huge. It's not even funny at that time. But now things are a little different already. So, I wouldn't attach the same kind of fear. We're still not out of the woods. But right now, job opportunities, I think there's quite a significant shift in mentality, like mindset. People were quite surprised. You can even open up a cafe. But then, as I said, maybe in this time, after the advent of social media, things begin to open up. Not because the government has, came to an epiphany. They were kicking and screaming and still trying to fight that kind of openness. But they've had to change. Otherwise, they would face the reprobation of the citizens.
I think one good thing about political whitewashing is also the fact that you have an entire generation growing up without knowing what Operation Spectrum and Operation Cold Store is. Yeah. So they have no fear.
As a blank slate.
They don't know what it is. They're like, Why are you also scared?
That's true. It's just, it cuts both ways, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's in a way a good thing that happened. Okay, another question. This is a little bit random, but do you think Lee Hsien Yang should run for president?
I would have liked to see him make a go for it because, under the current rules, qualifications are very stringent and very few people, qualify. I have a lot to say about the qualification process, but, that's another story altogether. But I would have liked to see him run. And I think he would have been eminently qualified to.
Do you think he might win?
Possible.
I think it's nothing is etched in stone now, but I have this funny feeling that if you run for it, he would win. I think there's a groundswell for, after what happened in the last two elections, right? Two presidential elections. I think there's a yearning for people who want to see some more checks and balance on the government.
Okay, like going back to the restrictions for like who can apply to be a president, right? Because you seem like you have a lot to say about it. What is the
whole can of worms?
Yeah. I like can of worms. What is your number one like thing that you dislike, like or you think is the most problematic?
The whole thing is that the government will then decide who it wants, and can change even your race.
Yeah.
Right? And it was on the NRIC.
Yep.
Madam Halima Jacobs.
I feel like we, as a nation, we were
unambiguous, no uncertain terms. Right? That it was Indian, and they were looking for a Malay candidate, right? And they put her in, and she qualified for it, and that kind of thing. I think that just put a lot of people off now. And then you continue to amend the constitution just to, this is where I have huge problems with.
Right. I think, the fact that they can just change the constitution willy-nilly is a problem. Okay, another question. Should we train our opposition members and put them in ministerial roles too? Is that ever going to happen?
Like kind of like a shadow,
I'm not sure.
Opposition with equivalent roles, although they're not in ministerial roles.
I think like just reading from his question, he's projecting into the future.
Yeah.
But I think do ministers need training? Because a lot of them seem to have no training, and then put there.
Yeah, I suppose ministers' role really is not. You don't need to get a soldier to be in the Ministry of Defense, although sometimes it helps, right? But what I'm saying is that you're here, you're managing resources, you're managing staff. You're getting the best people together and to make them work as a team, right? That's your role. And then to be able to formulate policies, and by formulating policies, sometimes you don't work in a little vacuum in the top of your office at some ministry building. You need to talk to people and find out what's the wants and desires of aspirations of the people, right? That's how a minister's role is. And unfortunately, you can train all you want, but you don't have that person with that X factor. And I just don't mean the smarts, the book smarts, I'm talking about the ability to be able to connect and inspire, motivate people, bring the best out in them so that we can inspire, an entire nation to a better future. That's what minister is all about. That's what government is all about, right? Instead of just pushing paper here and do number crunching and so on and so forth, right? Now that's the one aspect of it. But people forget that right now, as far-fetched as it might seem, for opposition, right now you see that, few of us in here, to become somehow you're a minister of this and that, prime minister, deputy prime minister. Don't forget that's how we started as a nation, right? The whole gang that Lee Kuan Yew all started, they weren't in opposition. I asked them at that time, any experience, right? It is as a prime minister or minister of finance or minister of home, right? It's that kind of thing that we tend to forget, that and this reluctance to then get opposition in greater numbers and hopefully in time to come with to take over as government. It's this whole fear that I say as a society, we just this fear of not being or not willing to take risks on the political front. Translates also into problems on our economic, on our financial front, on social front as well, and that's where I think going forward it's going to be problematic for us.
Okay, another question, which is, what is your prediction for the next general election? Because you very narrowly almost got it, almost. And then also in the East Coast GRC, like it was also a very narrow win.
Yeah.
And then now there's no Heng Swee Kiat there with his East Coast plan. What's your predictions for the next general elections?
It's things like that have to take into account what your opponent does on the other side, isn't it? When they begin to redraw boundaries, sometimes there are real head scratches and everything.
Right.
Who knows, right? I contested in Bukit Batok as a single seat, right? Who knows whether that's going to be redrawn and back into a GRC. And I say back into a GRC because previously Bukit Batok was a single seat. Then the SDP came very close, very close. I think it was, upwards of 47, 48%.
Tambia also was like about 47, was it? Or I can't remember. Yeah.
So about 30 years ago, we got very close. And then they withdrew it into a GRC.
You recently moved offices, right, to be closer to the...
We're looking for an office space right now.
Okay.
We haven't found one yet. But, we just want to get closer to the west so it will be more on the ground, closer to the ground.
So you'll be contesting in the same area regardless of GRCs or SMCs? Okay, got it.
And Sembawang, right? I noticed a lot of Sembawang presence. You don't have to answer.
We're trying to
right.
be a little bit more adventurous now.
Okay. All right, that's cool. Okay, wait, hold on. I think, okay. Another question was, what's your take on Pritam Singh's recent advocacy for English tests in Singapore citizenship or PR applications?
Well, I think the lingua franca, it's got to be where, like they say, the working language, and that's something that we all can begin to relate to, right? And then we've also got to be sensitive to our ethnic groups. And then I've heard some horror stories whereby, employers right now will say, oh, okay, we need Mandarin speakers only, so if you can't, please don't apply. And then they'll say that, that job doesn't even require somebody to speak Mandarin, that kind of thing. So it's something that we have to be very sensitive to as well, and just not only think of, and in that sense, I don't know, I'm ambivalent in terms of whether we should have a test where people need to pass. I think a lot of times, you ask me right now, I can converse, in Mandarin with, within politics or with my customers or my staff and that kind of thing. That's not an issue. But if you ask me to read, you should see my Chinese when I was.
So maybe like more like an oral.
No pulse one in my Chinese grades, that kind of thing. So I can't, but in terms of just being able to communicate, 聊天的时候, conversationally, that's okay.
So maybe more like an oral exam.
I think as long as we
like
can
that.
communicate now. I think we can communicate. I think that's hugely important too. Not wanting to downplay the fact that, but then tests. Well, I think a lot of thought must still go into that and more nuanced, I suppose, research.
Okay.
I guess like a follow-up question that I have to that question is that, our population demographics, right, between the races have largely been very, very stable, even as like the birth rate of Chinese people and Indian people are decreasing, right? And then, but we are still pretty much like 70-something% of the population. And I think, you can probably make guesses at who we are allowing to become our new citizens or whatever, right? Like, do you think that is
secret now, isn't it?
Oh shit. We might not supposed to talk about it. But anyways, do you think that it's viable to keep population levels the same, even as, like there are variabilities within, our population?
Yeah. Well, I guess, you're talking about, if we have another population, we have population growth paper that we actually put out. And we talked about some of these issues that you talked about. And the one thing that we've been emphasizing on is that, you've got to look again at the root causes. of why certain ethnic groups are producing or reproducing less than others, and so what's behind the whole idea, and then be able to encourage it, but at the same time not do so much social engineering. The point of view, you will have adverse consequences, unintended consequences that that again, things that you never contemplated that would happen come about. Don't meddle with social issues, with people's lives too much, and play God in that sense. I remember that's how I really got my start into politics, with this whole idea of
Graduate
mothers scheme. That was horrendous, where they basically said that women who were intelligent, and by intelligent they meant university degrees, you can have more than 2 children. You encourage them more than 2 children, but if not, then you better
It sounds so terrifying when you say it in 2023. It sounds so
totalitarian, dystopian.
So and it's just the kind of social engineering, as I said. You play God. Like, it's just I just found it very repugnant, and I hope we do less of that. And at the same time, it's not. I don't again say that we should be laissez-faire all the way, and not get people to move in a certain direction. And sure, that has to be the way as we evolve as human beings, isn't it? But just be very careful in terms of how we ask people to live their lives. What is happiness, and what makes them tick? What makes them what they aspire to? All these things, we've got to be a little bit more nuanced and more sensitive.
Actually, it seems that a pattern amongst you today is that I notice you're always trying to direct people back to the fundamentals of who they are as people, who they are as citizens, what do they find value in their lives. These are very cutting, close to the heart questions, but they're not easy to come to an answer to at any means. So,
hence the importance of us, debating and finding out that right level where we need to then behave as a society, but at the same time have enough freedoms for us to thrive as individuals too. Right. I'm not saying that that's an easy topic and there's one easy answer for everything, but it necessitates us coming together and really being able to talk about how different we are, at the same time having these common aspirations that if we don't work together as a group, as a society, everything falls apart. So it's that fine balance in there, which I believe honestly, okay, now it'll swing from this pendulum swings, right? We'll go from one end to another, but we're human beings, right? All of us are different, all of us at the same time are the same, and we need to find that common ground where all of us, majority of us, can agree on and come together and to work for the future. So, as I said, these are things that we need to more space to have discussions and debates on.
Definitely.
Another question. Hypothetically, if you become PM tomorrow, would you, broadly speaking, increase the size of the government? More, for example, more tax, more policies, or reduce the size of the government?
There's one good question. Why do we have mayors?
Yeah. What do they do?
What do they do? And I hear that if I'm not mistaken, I think they pay about $60,000 a month.
A lot of money. Yeah.
And that's not including the MP allowance. So you add everything up, comes
do they get bonuses?
80K. Don't know. I think the variable bonus or something, performance bonus they might get. But this is what I'm saying, you see. You've got, and I'm talking about at the ministerial level now. You got all these things are created for what? And I say, if I wanted to do something, I'll scrutinize and say, look, how much is it costing our taxpayers? Man, that's got to be, and I can tell you have this money slushing around. Sure, you find, just very, digress a very quick point. There was this bus stop that I had down below my place. It was perfectly serviceable, right? And those seats were just slanted ones that you face that oncoming traffic, so you see the bus, right? And the whole thing was just there were no defects in there, so there was, you pose a safety problem. but they just dug the whole thing up. Excavators, everything came in, and then they replaced it with and then in the meantime built a temporary bus stop right beside it, and then built a new one up, and then the new one, all the seats right now instead of it being started was just not straight. I'm saying money too much. You know what I mean? And this is where I'm saying you were talking about excess in government, right. And I think these are things that we got to look into. And if in Parliament right now, I'd be just getting the government to account for all this spending, and then not forgetting. You remember that rubbish center that they built at Asian Civilization?
400K or something? 100K?
No,
Close to 1
million.
Okay, sorry.
880,000.
I'm very bad with numbers.
So these are things that we really need to talk about. We're talking about access in government.
Yeah.
I think the other very terrible thing about the financial system is also the fact that they are allocated budgets every year, and before the financial year ends, they have to kind of spend all of it. Otherwise, they get a reduced budget next year, right? Yeah. And then I hear from my friends, right, that sometimes because of that, then they find like really random shit to do. Like, for example, tear up an entire driveway and repave it just to spend that money. Yeah. So,
and I remember when we ran a town council before, at the end of the year or something, the ministries would be sending you stacks and stacks of posters, and it says, why? Put up, but you can only put up so many before you plaster up the whole town, and but it's just, what do you do? Paper, and you're not talking about good quality glossy art paper, and then it stacks of it and then throw away.
Wow. Oh my god, those are the best though.
Yeah,
I love those because I use them. I fold them into like little boxes, and I used to feed the neighborhood cats. And then because it's so thick and glossy, the juices don't overflow.
Correct.
Anyways,
actually, one of the funniest things that because I used to join a PA, right? So I did like design work for them when I was younger as well, and even from a very young age, I was joining it because I was in some sports activity. So when I helped them design their calendars and stuff, right? And my question to all the seniors or the staff working in PA is like, why would I want a MP's face on my fridge the whole year?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a crying shame, because at the same time, when you juxtapose it with how difficult Singaporeans are finding it to make ends meet, to make that all-elusive dollar, it really is a struggle right now. And then here you are, just willy-nilly signing a check, buy this, buy that.
Okay, a personal question from Natalie, our awesome moderator. On mothers and questions about who we are, here's a question on a different note for Dr. Chee. Do you speak Peranakan Malay, and do you speak it to your kids? Does your family speak any dialects at home?
Hi, Natalie. Yeah, great question. In growing up, my mother, all campur. I mean, Lauteng, and then, all the different, especially food as well. It takes show and all the babi pongte and that kind of thing.
Oh my god, I'm hungry.
But you know how it is, and I find it sad also that the Peranakan culture is slowly, as with every other ethnic group, that was what makes Singapore really tick, right? Your chicken rice from Hainanese chicken rice lah, then you got your Hokkien mee lah, then you got your wonton mee, Cantonese, that came to us, as diverse culture and everything, and then they make us speak Mandarin campaign, and then our names all had to be what was it, Hanyu Pinyin?
Pinyin, yeah.
So that was just this conformity for its own sake, and I just felt that it was so unnecessary. I mean, instead of celebrating our diverse culture, and then only you go and enjoy your nasi padang and favorites of your lontong lah, mee rebus lah, and then your Indian papadom lah, and that kind of thing. It was this very vibrant kind of. Sadly, I don't know. It all boils down again into how we value society, but. To answer Natalie's question, again, it's very hard, with the kids. Very difficult. We communicate in speak English at home every now and then. As they were growing up, now they always become with their man, sia, and all the different expressions that come out. But as I said, have your ability to speak well. And not just speak well, but be able to communicate on two different things. But be able to communicate effectively with one another. I think that's the most important thing.
I think we're gonna wrap it up
Do
soon.
our hypothetical now.
Just two more questions. Two more questions. And then we'll wrap it up because we've been going on for like
2 hours.
2 hours, which
So-
I love actually because we
Apologies,
don't.
but you are apparently quite popular online. So
Apologies for just rambling on and on.
Okay, so the next question: are you gonna be a full-time MP if you win in the next general election?
Right,
Because right now you've got two businesses, and then like the last general election, you were saying that you were gonna be a full-time MP.
Unequivocally, yes. This is one
okay.
thing I'll tell you, because there's no way. If you cannot afford to become a full-time MP, then don't run. Because I can tell you that the amount of work that goes into it, you just cannot do it part-time. And then you're paid an allowance. Okay, mind you, it's not a salary allowance. I think it's tax-free. Allowance is up to about 16K a month. Have you heard you can pay an allowance of $16,000 a month, and then doing a part-time job? I don't know. It's and then you talk about some conflict of interest, issues of interests here and there. So I think yes. To answer the question very straightforwardly, yes. I'll do full-time.
What's gonna happen to Orange and Teal?
I think you just gonna put a set of people. Since my wife is going to be able to run it, I don't see it as a problem.
Awesome. Okay, the last question before the magical moment. You recently joined TikTok, right?
Oh my
And
God.
are you going to start doing the dances? I mean, personally, because I'm an old person and I'm very judgmental, I would say please don't. But it seems to get a lot of traction from the younger generation because all our ministers and MPs are doing it. Yeah. So what's your social media strategy now?
I mean, okay, it's one of those things which damn if you do and damn if you don't, right? You know what I mean? And you cannot, I don't know, I've been, procrastinating and putting off for a long time. Everybody says, hey, you've got to get on TikTok. And I say, but, TikTok, and then, is there things I can get out onto? It says yes and no, but, you need to get onto it anyway just to engage with the younger generation. So I did a video about 40 seconds or something. Oh, no, too long. It's got to be 10 seconds, max 20. And it's like, wait, how do you boil everything down and
Hi guys, bye.
yeah.
Attention spans are so short now, man.
And nobody wants to see me gyrate on TikTok.
I mean, maybe once, but not all the time.
Even then, I think they were so cringy that I think, But at the same time, I realized that that's another medium which you need to reach out to people. And I understand that increasingly, TikTok now people get information from in there as well. So whatever, and that medium that we can use to reach out to people, will do that. Now, my point is that, okay, there's the time and place for everything, right? You need to have fun. We just want to sometimes let our head down and just look at nonsense, and just fun things that make us laugh. And it's okay, it's good in that sense. But at the same time, there's also a place where we just a little bit more of a serious discussion on certain things. So I'll try to keep a balance. At the same time, I promise I try to make it as unboring as possible. So get on it right now, okay? I've got some things going on. I just started. I just had 3 posts in there.
I don't have TikTok on my phone because I'm
Neither
old.
do I here.
Maybe in the future, or maybe you have already done so. There will be a younger volunteer from the SDP
Yeah.
who is savvy about such things, and he or she, they know
Yeah,
what.
man.
Yeah, I think we should actually look to the younger people
I do.
for.
We have a good group of people that are just advising me on how
Nice.
to go about
Awesome.
it. Yeah.
Nice,
Hopefully they'll advise you not to do too many dances lah. Okay, so I think we can move on to the magical moment.
Dr. Chee,
Dan
you have
Wong,
been like
please
a
hit us.
fantastic trooper, right? To
Yes,
answer the
thank you.
questions of all our audiences, and all their burning questions, and you've been sitting through this. Thank you so much. But now, unfortunately, you must go through the final test.
Our Longkang tradition.
Oh no.
Yeah,
I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
okay. So previously, when you came here, right, it was a test of it was a silly hypothetical, yes, but underlying it was a test of guile, a test of social agility, if you may.
EQ.
EQ. Yeah.
Political correctness.
Yes. Okay. So this time it's a different test, right? Okay. So I want you guys to imagine, right, that you guys are running running for MPs, right? You have it's 2025 and the elections are taking place. You have not slept for three nights, right? Because they are counting the votes and the people have voted, and you are sitting in your office late at night. Okay, you're alone, right? And a word is coming in. Okay, the initial counts have taken place, and it's likely that you will win. Okay, suddenly your computer screen flickers. Right, and then the lights start flickering, right? and
Are we in Malaysia now?
you feel the hair on your skin rise, and before you, right, like 5 to 6 cloaked figures just appear, and then they start floating, and then they unveil their hoods, and who else do you see? But like the new 4G leadership or 5G leadership, sorry, of our country.
Oh my God, we are going to get taken down, dude.
You have got like Lawrence Wong. You have got like Ong Ye Kung. You have got all our ministers. And then when they take off their hoods, right, you see that they are wearing like they are wearing beautiful dresses and they have wands about them. So I'm not making this up, sir. Okay, before we jump into this, right, Dr. Chee, can I ask you if you know what a magical girl is?
Oh no!
Oh no!
A magical girl. Okay, no worries. Let me quickly for the purpose of this hypothetical, let me just
basically Sailor Moon.
So if you're familiar with Sailor Moon, right? These are young ladies, right? Who upon going through a magical transformation, they wear these dresses and they have these wands, right? To fight otherworldly supernatural horrors from other dimensions. Right. So like this. So imagine. So I actually drew a picture of Chan Chun Sing. Right, in magical. So imagine he looks like this. He's before you right now in his pink flutter sleeve dress. He's got a beautiful wand and a magical animal companion. Okay, and they're all looking at you seriously, right? And then they are like, Dr. Chee, we don't really like you, but it looks like you're going to, or Miss Angie, we don't really like you, but it looks like you're going to get into Parliament. And the secret behind Parliament, the reason why we are paid so high salaries, right, is that we're actually all magical girls. And other than our jobs in Parliament, other than our jobs outside, we're actually fighting otherworldly horrors on a daily, weekly basis in our magical girl uniforms. Yeah. Right, and if you want to be part of this club, if you want to come onto like the CEC of the PAP, you have to accept the wand. And by the way, a wand magically appears on your desk before you, right? And join us in our fight, against the nightmarish horrors from another dimension that threaten Singapore, and go about doing your parliamentary duties, your duties elsewhere and everywhere. Okay, so before you as you are processing, sir, I can see you are processing. I want you to understand, like, if you take this seriously, right, you are going to have to be A, in danger of your life. Okay, B, still have to go about your everyday business. You still have to write notes and spar with Shanmugam in Parliament, by the way. Then you have to go about your business, Orange and Teal and all that, and you still have to be a father, and you have to do all these things, right? Then you get to take part in the leadership of this country. Okay, so my hypothetical to all of you is that will you take up this job, and yes or no, and why?
What kind of horrors are we talking about here?
Or dangerous stuff, the dangerous anime stuff, Do
we wait? Are we fighting in short skirts?
Of course, that's the only way you can get your magical powers. And I thought you knew that.
Yeah, your transformation will happen, right? In like 15 seconds, and the enemy will all pause while you are transforming.
Correct, as is tradition, sir. Yeah. If you are not familiar.
Wait. So you have to join the PAP to get into their CEC.
No. Pritam Singh is there also. You can be, the opposition is there too.
As long as you're in the parliament.
Yeah. By the way, Pritam Singh rocks are like a beautiful flutter sleeve halter neck dress. But it's just the way of things.
Angie, you please take the first shot.
I feel like, if Lawrence Wong can wear a dress and kill some horrors and not die, right? It shouldn't be that hard. Right?
You have a lot of confidence in yourself. Okay. But you must do everything else.
I beat you in a knife fight.
As is tradition here.
Yeah, I'm not worried. I think I would say yes.
Okay. Maybe I'll go next. My answer is
why is it? Okay, why?
Oh yeah, why? Go ahead with your why. Yeah, why? Other than the fact that you can defeat Lawrence Wong in a knife fight.
Then I get into parliament lah. Right?
Okay,
And then
that's your
you
why.
can do stuff.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll just take a photo of them, right? Or in all their
No,
magical.
you can't tell anybody. You can't tell you can't tell May. You can't tell your kids. It has to be totally secret. And you find out, right, that all those disgraced PAP and WP MPs, right, who had extramarital affairs were actually engineered because they couldn't keep up with their magical girl duties. They failed in their duties. And
So they were ousted.
they were ousted, yes.
I think I'll find a way to leak the photos.
National
because-
security, you know. Why you like that?
For the lols. Can you imagine like everybody looking at them in their magical girl uniform? That'd be great.
Okay. So you're just a troll.
Maybe.
Okay, I'll go next. My answer is unequivocally no, because I feel like there'll be too much responsibility, and I'm quite a lazy person, and I'm also a lover, not a fighter. and I already have so much to do, and I already have to spar with Shanmugam in Parliament. I don't think I have the time to fight stuff at night. You know, I need my sleep.
Wait, but you said that you have to take this job, otherwise you cannot get into parliament, right?
Yeah.
Then how do you spar with Shanmugam in parliament if you don't?
Oh, then in the case I'll give it up entirely. I'm sorry, I don't have the will to carry through with my political appointment. Walao, it's too much. I guess the job is more than what I bargained for.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's no for sure.
Jerry?
Also, I'm too fat to look cute in a dress anymore.
It's okay. Now we have body positivity movements.
No,
it's okay.
I have my own standards to keep up to.
All right. Jerry?
I will do it just to see all the MPs in their magical girl uniforms, man. Then after that, I'll fail spectacularly, and they will just, engineer some
Extramarital affair.
yeah, to kick me out. Yeah, so I'll just do it for the, for my own sake,
Or for the
Not for the
experience.
nation lah.
yeah, not for it.
Dr. Chee?
So you've had enough time to think, sir.
Notwithstanding the fact that I'll look ridiculously hideous in that outfit, I suppose, because you did mention about having to fight off forces that
Threaten our country. Yes.
I suppose on that score alone, it'd be unpatriotic if we didn't take up the task. And as I said,
Unpatriotic,
have to,
man.
against this whole part about the appearance, if that's what it takes to fend off these forces, then so be it.
Do you think you enjoy it? Like, enjoy wearing the short skirts and stuff?
I suppose not, not to. There was this incident last time we had this in the US. We had this thing where we were just entertaining some of our guests, and it's dinner and that kind of thing. And they made us come out in a beauty contest, but all guys were wearing dresses. So we were all assigned to do that, and so had a bit of experience in that regard, but nothing that is frilly in the outfit with wand and so it's.
Would you have a phrase that you say as you transform into a magical girl, like for the nation or something?
Oh my God, that's something that you think of on TikTok, man.
Yeah.
That's my next post.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Please wear the costume too. That would be amazing.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, you heard it first on Longkang Kitties. Dr. Chee will
Wear a short skirt.
and become a Maho Shoujo girl to defend our nation, okay? And that's already what sets him apart from other MPs, because I don't know whether they'll do that.
Okay.
Knowing our TikTok users, they'll be probably taking my photo and just superimposing it on some.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
All the nightmares.
All the stitches and stuff that will come out of it. It will be amazing. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Chee, for entertaining our nonsense and coming down into the Longkang for this discussion. I think, it's always such an honor for you to come here and entertain us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Do you want to pimp?
Plug. Yeah.
You
Let's
want to
not use pimp. Plug.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to plug your channels or like where people can find you and stuff like that?
Right now, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and just got on to TikTok, I think about a week ago. So, it's a good place, I think, unlike previously when we had very limited channels of reaching out to folks. And as I said, there'll be a mixture of more lighthearted stuff with more serious issues that I really need to discuss with my fellow citizens. So, if you've got the inclination and time for it, please drop by and sign up.
They can also sometimes see you at Orange Interior and stuff
Yes,
as well, right?
From time to time, I'll just post events, even on Mother's Day and simple things like just again, very new thing. We just managed to get a public license, entertainment license for the place so we can have live entertainment. So we're just going to do a bit of sing along at Orange and Teal, and then we're just thinking of starting on Mother's Day and then different events as well. As I said, light-hearted moments together with more serious ones.
So can you quickly let our audiences know where Orange, the two outlets can be found at?
Yeah, one is at Rochester Mall. That's near Buona Vista. It's a little harder to find. Don't go to Star Vista. Okay, come across the road. It's more obscure in the sense, hidden by thick foliage, and trees and things like that. But it's on the second floor. But it's a nice place. We just created this place. We've got this nice.
Yeah, it's very nice and
area.
spacious.
Yeah,
and
seating area, coffee table,
and
that kind
greenery.
of thing. Hope people will just come in. There's books over there. Just come by, even just to read. It's okay. That's come down. And then the other one, more in the hustle and bustle of places in Marina Square. It's towards the Millennium Walk side, Ritz-Carlton end. But just come down, and as I said, I just want to make this alternative kind of a business model work. So need all the support I can get.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Chee.
Fantastic.
We'll post all the links to your social media and stuff in the description box below. So that's the end of this episode. Thank you so much. What does John usually do? He always does the outro, so I can't remember. Anyways, follow us on social media like Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Discord. What?
Yeah.
What do you say?
Discord is out of control.
Message us for Discord link, whatever.
Yeah,
okay,
message
all
us
right.
on Instagram or Facebook for Discord links.
Yeah, that's okay. So that's the end of the episode. Bye.
Bye. Okay, let's hang on for 5 seconds of silence.